Make sure this is on. Where did this just go? All right, get started on this right now. Let's go through Bitcoin. Good afternoon. Okay, to start with here, just start off with kind of weekly open here. So we swept lows below the 10-week, basically tagged the 3-month. I don't know why that's not on my screen. My object tree is a mess right now. Nothing is organized. Honestly, I think I just deleted it. But basically November up to present date value. So we'd be about, yeah, I mean, we basically tagged that. I'm going to say that we did clean up these lows. Let's just start at the bottom here, and then we'll kind of go through current shifts right now and what I can see as potential. Yeah, so we swept those lows, deviated 10 weeks of value, basically tagged 3 months. So we traversed, obviously we had the failure up here at the 14-week POC above the 3-month high. And we did basically traverse value here, swept the lows, and to be honest, it really wasn't a constructive sweep at all. Usually when you sweep lows, you want to see a nice kind of V-shaped reversal. You don't want to see time and space spent above a level. That's not really a sweep. A passive bidder stepped in here, passive buyer, and that's what caused us to shift back above into value. Really nice return pullback there. I sent the idea, I think I was asleep. This one, same idea as well. We remained rotational, right? So we saw acceptance and a shift back above the 10-week and the 3-month, as well as this older 17-day, which is this level here. And then we became rotational. So we traversed value here, rejected previous week value and this 6-day composite low. And then from there, we came back and remained rotational, swept this low, again, just rotational, right? Building out 3 days of value. Again, rotational. Kind of found support at, I guess this was 2 days of balance up to this point. Now we formed a 3-day composite here. Yeah, found support there, and then we saw a squeeze, a little bit of time and space above here, kind of choppy, and we have these super poor lows throughout here. And that's kind of where I like to bid, hopefully, after FOMC. So, we did see a shift above value here. We saw this area hold. This level wasn't, I guess actually I merged this. I think I had this as 4 days before, so I'm going to update. I'll probably do a full write-up today, I think, in the channel, going into FOMC. But we didn't really, I think my initial level was kind of here. Didn't really shift above there, but we did hold kind of the breakout. So usually when you have like buttered up profiles like this, usually you'd see something like that. This one kind of broke out and just retested, and it held value area high. And then, I mean, now that I've merged this looks like a better composite. I just don't think I had it updated, but still the right idea. We also flipped a 7-day rolling VWAP, which is a good trend indicator short term. I've also shifted inside of monthly value, which is a nice shift. So obviously if we traverse monthly value, that puts us right at the full traversal of the 3-month. So you saw acceptance inside, or I mean, I guess we kind of bottomed off the 3-month. We shifted back inside of shorter term value, and now we've shifted back inside of monthly value. So there's enough overlap here. That would be traversal of both of those. And we remain imbalanced up on weekly value. So obviously we're rotational here. Maybe go imbalanced up, haven't really retested it. Didn't really retest it here. Got a pullback there, and obviously we held and front ran these lows. So that would be a bullish shift against weekly value as well as shifting above into this composite. And we have traversed value. We have traversed the 6 days of value here. Found a bottom here, so now we're rotational within value, and I assume that's what we'll stay as going into FOMC. I don't see how we would establish much movement up to that point. Just close my tab. Yeah. Okay. Let me look at, is this my VWAP? Yeah. Let me just look at this really quickly, and then we'll burn through more shit here. Previous year value, yeah. So previous year value area low basically has held as support. So I guess we kind of reclaimed it once we shifted back inside of value right here. So that was that sort of deviation of value. Passive bidder stepped in, and then you can see it was decent support, and then we've shifted back. So this level here is not technically developing year value. This is the same as monthly, being that we're only in January. So the periodicity under. So what am I saying? The periodicity, yeah, under. So in order to use yearly value to differentiate that, it would have to be the second quarter starting, if that makes sense. Previous quarter val, very similar, right? Same level basically as previous year val. Monthly is more important here, I would say. So same thing, we found our low here, right? Shifted back inside a previous month value. We're now finding support at previous month VWAP, as well as a really nice shift back inside of developing month value. So again, that full traversal would put us up at 94K. Monthly VWAP again kind of confluent with this single printer thin area here where this gap is and these highs. So that's a pretty obvious target as well, I would say, going forward to the upside. So really good bullish shifts there. So right now I'm leaning more bullish. Do I know that we're going to traverse 3 months of value to 94 yet? And technically no. It just depends on what we see with FOMC, I would say, but that's a really nice bullish shift. Jump over to weekly here, and you'll see weekly. You'll see the shifts against value occur quicker, but really good interactions. So we open the week and bounce up rotational, imbalanced up, finding resistance at previous week value area low. Kind of shift back inside, mean reversion, squeeze up, don't accept higher, become rotational, start to compress against weekly value area high, acceptance. It actually fails, but it was a pretty decent level to work with. Acceptance, so you're expecting traversal, right? Same thing, traversal. And then there's the most meaningful shift once we actually broke out of this 3-day value. They become imbalanced up on weekly value, and it's also the most meaningful shift, proving acceptance inside of previous week value. So knowing that, again, it's no guarantee, but you're expecting the traversal of value up to here. So it puts you towards 91.2 with previous month value. And you can see there's another rejection of, that would be your imbalance pullback essentially of weekly value. So that's a bullish shift there as well. So bullish shift here, and then you could say maybe this tagged it. I may be from Binance or something. I might have. I don't know. So no, not quite. But regardless, it definitely a pullback there, and it held. So that would be imbalance against weekly value. So that's also a very bullish shift. It looks like we're capping upside against previous month VWAP right now. So now let me go over trade setups. I think right now, this is what I sent earlier today. I wanted to play the sweep here. Really quick deviation and kind of shift back inside, and I think that would be a really good bullish shift to, very obviously target the set of value, which has already been tagged, being that we're rotational and we swept lows, etc. But that would have been a really good bullish shift to try and target the traversal up towards 94. And I still have that in mind. I think it's very possible. Again, you don't know what you don't know going into FOMC, right? What do I want to look at here? I think it's very possible that, being that we haven't swept these lows, let's go to like the 15-minute, I guess. You kind of have this thin area here, this imbalance, whatever. Right, you have 1, 2, 3. You now have essentially 4 lows here sitting above this imbalance. Previous week val, weekly VWAP, and then you have the 3-day high that we formed here. Let me quickly go over composite structure, and then I'll burn through more stuff here, I guess. So I don't want to make this too long. Yeah, so 6 days of balance built out here, and we have 3 days of balance since essentially Saturday to Tuesday. Yeah, up to Wednesday, rather, today. So shift above there, acceptance inside of this older composite. There's your full traversal, right? Mentioned, I sent along here yesterday. Yeah, so we remain rotational here until proven otherwise. Of course, there has been bullish shifts. Like I mentioned, a bullish shift against weekly value, bullish shift, accepting back inside of monthly value, as well as breaking out of this composite, accepting into this composite. Those are all bullish shifts, as well as the 3-month here. And sorry, this breakdown and then shift higher. So based off of recency as well as duration. So, what references you would say are more important, being The larger composites usually have more meaning to them, and shifts, like the most recent shift against value, is also very important when it comes to forming your narrative and bias. Both of those point to upside right now. The question is, what does FOMC bring? I would say, and we're above the 7-day rolling VWAP, so that is good as well. It's a good short-term trend indicator. So for setups, I would say maybe we get some sort of 3 drives and we have a really quick deviation, clean up these lows. So we have these kind of intraday poor lows. So if we, again, we're just rotational. So if we get something like this, I guess where would you to, yeah, I think it would be, does that make sense? 1, 2, 3, yeah. So I mean, if we got something like this, where's the tool I'm looking for? The path tool, this one. So if we got something like this, maybe, and then maybe, I don't know how far we deviate, I would expect probably right around weekly VWAP, maybe 88.3, and then a quick shift above, and then I think that is where I would ideally like to play that higher up towards here. Again, I don't know. This is just what I have as an idea right now. 1, 2, or you could even play it this way. I guess also would kind of make sense if you look for 3 drives this way, I think. 1, 2, 3. There's that 4. I can't count. I'm drawing that wrong. Where's this tool? Like this. 1, 2, maybe something like that. How does he? Okay, there. End that tool off. Something like that is what I would anticipate going forward. As for being in shorts, I did mention this area, I think maybe last week or something. Once we were, when we were rotating, I think it was no start of the week. When we were down here, I wanted one more push up to here. I mean, I didn't take this or send this, that's whatever. But that would have been your short if you were to take it. Although, it would have been a lower probability, being that the narrative would be bullish, being that we broke above here, accepted into here, and bounce up on weekly value, return pullback, acceptance into monthly value. Those are all bullish shifts. So right now, I don't think I'd be leaning to take any shorts, I don't think. Yeah, I don't think I'd be looking to short, at least right now, unless we find a failure somewhere, maybe up towards the 10-week, or I mean, ideally, I mentioned this I think a couple times, if we find a failure up here, maybe tag the POC and then shift back under, shift back inside a monthly value as well as the 3-month. That means we're remaining rotational. In that case, you would target the other side of value, which is 96K, 95K. Very simple, right? Rotational until proven otherwise, which is exactly what we had here. Rotational, rotational, rotational. It's rotational until it shows you otherwise. Rotational, right? So it's going to continue to balance here until it breaks out, right? So don't try and anticipate breakouts. Of course, you can get an idea when things are going to break out based on structure and where it finds support and resistance within the range. You can kind of see when it's more ripe to actually break out a value, but again, the condition doesn't actually change until you see it shift. So an example, right, it'd be something like this. So you're looking at, structurally, it's still, price is still putting in higher highs and higher lows, as well as one other thing that's a really useful tip as well, I guess I'll just touch on this, is looking at the maturity of the profile, which is something that's really not talked about by many people. I don't think many people know about it, but something worth noting. Maybe I want to write that down, but I've talked about low volume nodes and the distribution of a profile. So for example, you want a bell-shaped distribution like this. Here's your mean and then your 68%. So one standard deviation away from the mean is this area. And you want the most volume being transacted, obviously, at the POC, and you want it to slowly taper off towards the edges of value, and then it gets thin towards the outside. So you get, like a bell shape like that. So that's a good distribution there. Right, so over time, usually if you have massive gaps or, immature distribution, I guess you could say, that's why I also use the visible range profile to see where the gaps are. But like, for example, let's just say something like this. Let's say this is your composite here. Oftentimes, this can be indicative of when you can actually anticipate a breakout of value. Again, you don't want to be anticipatory, I guess you could say, but if you have let's say this was your multi-day composite. Okay, here's value here. Let's just say price is rotational in here. It's much more likely that you're going to see this thin area filled in. So you see this distribution fill out like this. And by the time that happens, that's when it's more likely to see a break. Whereas if it's just like this, it's much less likely to break out until this void is filled. So something worth noting there. I'll touch on that in further content and stuff, but just something that's really useful tool or a way to interpret profiles. So as of right now, I would look for a shift lower, rejection, maybe deviation here. And let's say that doesn't happen. If we do shift above here, I think we already reacted off this kind of area. That was the failure last week above Friday. If we do shift above here, we have this older 5-day composite. I'd probably look to go long there as well. Not as much confluence there, but again, bullish shifts against everything. So everything, monthly value is pointing upwards. Previous month value area high is pointing upwards, confluent with this range high here, or value high here rather. And then, we talk about the more significant shifts against value. So acceptance, finding resistance, support at 3 months, shifting back above the 10-week, back inside the 17-day. Break above here, right? So we're all pretty much everything is shifting bullish. So with that being said, playing, a follow through continuation kind of trade acceptance into this profile is something I'd probably look at, I think. So going forward, I would be looking. This, I think, is your higher probability trade. And of course, if this fails and we break down, then the condition changes and you would expect traversal to the other side of value, which would put you at previous year val. Not expecting that right now, though, so I'm not even going to mention it, but that's, what you would anticipate if we did break down. So essentially just this for right now. How I would play that. And then if anyone has that long open from before, then I would just hold it right now. Hopefully we do clean these lows, would be ideal. And I would look to size in way more upon a shift here. And yeah. Do you have any questions on that? I can happily touch on more of that. Unique, I don't know if you're in here. I know you asked me to do GU and gold. I haven't charted those in a while. Let me just touch on those. Gold. I mean, everything is bullish on gold. That's the thing with the way I trade. It's all about balance. When there isn't balance, it's harder to. Yeah, what's up, Doug? It's harder to trade when there isn't balance, right? When you have value to work with, if it's rotational, you play the extremes, and when it breaks out, you anticipate that that leads to more imbalance. So, right, you play the extremes here. Whether you'd be a bit more hesitant to try and short gold here, but I mean, like this, for example, which is the long I took yesterday. This makes total sense, right? Sweep below, acceptance back inside of value. The complete narrative on gold is just upside, so that's a good long. And then it became compressive here, right, against value area high, and that's what caused this huge impulse. So when you get a break like this, you're anticipating more upside. That's usually what happens when you break from value, especially when you get this kind of compressive stuff here. So this is what I call compression. And when you get this, it's much less likely that, like when you get a clean break from value, if you have something like this, right, you're rotational, you get a break and a retest, that's where you long. When you have compression, like when you're building up, let's say you have something like this, say prices like this, rotational, and then you get this kind of stuff here, right? Often, more times than not, there's going to be shorts trying to defend this level. So when they're all forced to close after X amount of time spent compressing against this level of resistance, right? When they are forced to close their position, you get a more aggressive squeeze because they have to close their position. And essentially, when you're shorting and close, you have to buy back. So that pushes the market up, right? So more often than not, you just get an impulse like that. So that's a prime example of compression against a level right here. So I'm not in this by any means. I wasn't even looking at this, but this is a bit harder to position into. Usually what I do when I play this, again, this is a bit more advanced, but usually I would position like partly upon anticipating the compression or the breakout, which usually don't anticipate anything, but that's how you'd play that. And then I also try and add right on the squeeze. So Bitcoin was similar yesterday when I got into that. I also wasn't home, but where's Bitcoin? I'm kind of getting off track here, but I want to touch on this quickly. Where was it? Or maybe Bitcoin didn't really. Oh, it was here. I guess it wasn't really a squeeze. Or maybe it was, but it wasn't really super compressive. That would be a good example of compression there. So that was compression against weekly value area high, right? This kind of flaggy weak price action, then impulsed up. So never mind. Anyways, back to gold. I mean, anytime it comes back towards here, if you get this, then I'd be looking to play probably value area low to long. Right now, let me look what we have. I'll look at today's value. Poor lows there. I mean, I don't know, man. Like it doesn't. I don't really want to play it. I would say this is possible. This is developing value on the day, even though I mean the day's partly done, so this isn't horrible to use. Usually, I don't like using a profile that's developing. Like I want to use this one that's already developed and price broke. So this is static, established value, where this is still developing. I mean that would have been decent, but I would say if you could clean up these lows, maybe reject, like get an imbalance, pull back into weekly value area high, and then maybe shift back above value. That would be a long, and I would just target value area high and maybe hold from there, being that it's cleaned up the lows. That may lead to another break from balance, something like that. From there, probably maybe even bid weekly VWAP, depending where this lies. So somewhere around this imbalance under these lows. Just play a reversal there. That's how I'd play gold. I mean, there's not really much to talk about, to be honest. It's not overly interesting. But that's probably how I'd play it, would be something like this. And shift back inside. So good enough reaction, maybe you could enter some here. And then, I mean, off the immediate sweep here, it should give a good reaction, or it's probably not going to reclaim. So you could probably enter here as long as, like I said, it has a good reaction. There's good excess on the low. And then if it shifts back inside, value might migrate. So this value area low might be a little bit lower or higher, but a shift back inside of value. And, you could probably target that. So it looks like it's building out value again here. So you might have something to work with. But that's probably how I'd play that. And then work with the volume levels are basically the same as time right now. So I would play it like that. GU, man, I have no idea. Isn't it? I think it just swept like previous year high. Pretty sure. Maybe. June? Yeah, looks like it did. Yeah, it just swept previous year high. I mean, that's a really good area to work with. So is this. Shift back inside a weekly value, monthly value. Yeah, I would bid somewhere around here, I think. We did sweep that, so I mean, bear that in mind, but I would merge these two profiles here. Probably play the POC of this. Seems decent, I would say. I would mark this off. This is a really shitty composite, but there is 2 days of value here, so I would go like this. Something like that. Here's your weekly value. So it looks like it's shifting inside a weekly value, so you know if it accepts inside of here, you should expect traversal, right? So that would put you down towards the POC. That's what I would expect. You also have a really poor lows here, it looks like. Why can't I see? Yeah, like what is that, weekly open or something? Yep. That's weekly open. So yeah, really, I mean, I would bid anywhere around here. So let me put that back on the screen. I wouldn't care too much about this volume value area high right now. Even though the VWAP's there, I probably wouldn't touch that, to be honest. If it does shift back inside, like I would be flat right now, but I would expect either bid here, weekly val in the POC, or rejection of monthly value, maybe the 7-day even kind of moves up, clean up these lows, and then a shift back inside. So yeah, I would long or look to long anywhere here, here is how I would play that. I don't think I'd be trying to short anything right now. I mean, what's it doing here? Yeah, that's how I would play that. I don't think I'd be shorting this. If anything, I would have tried to short the top off that sweep of previous year high, but that's how I'd play that. Nothing overly interesting there. I don't think. All right, anybody want me to go over anything else? I'll do a full write-up, I think, for Bitcoin. That pretty much touches on everything I wanted to go over, I think. Rejected previous week VWAP. Next up. I don't think there's anything else worth going over here. Let's look at some positioning. Yeah, so one thing to note, I can't remember if this is accurate or not. Sometimes you'll see this. Again, I think it's possible we still take these lows. And again, we are rotational. Pre-FOMC, I don't think we're going to move. Hopefully we take these lows. But what we have here essentially is we didn't sweep the lows. So that would have been a trigger for me. I also wasn't home, but not really any meaningful bottom here, in my opinion, on this low. So you can see here, this is open interest. This is delta here. So you can see my shading. So a decrease in open interest or anything that's red or dark gray is positions closing, and anything light gray or green is positions opening. And then the candle is also shaded with large increases in delta too, which is what this is. So large increase, positive delta, large decrease, negative delta. So there's not really any crazy significant, well, there's shorts there, but wait, what is that? So some longs got squeezed out here, but again, nothing crazy at the low. You can see how none of this is colored. Like this is a heavy delta candle. This one's moderately uh, heavy, I guess if I want to use that word. And then at the low here, which we didn't sweep, there's no real, if you look here, there's no, intensity shading or threshold shading or whatever. Like it's just gray and black, right? That's how I have this set up, if that makes sense. But what you can see is increases in open interest and positive delta, especially you can see the green one there. So there's a larger increase. And then I think the majority of this is also new longs. So the majority of this move here, you can see is positive delta and open interest is increasing throughout most of this. So there's a fair bit of longs kind of opening in this area here. I don't think any of them really puked up their position here. It doesn't look like. No, so those are more shorts. Yeah. So normally what you want to see into a level, and I've mentioned this before, normally what you want to see into a level is either trap positions. So if there's new shorts opening right at the low, so down here, so I'd be able to see that, especially if there was any significance, or, a squeeze, or any large flush of open interest. So you can see like this candle right here, which is this one, so not really anything of importance being that it's not at the low. You'd want to see like this, for example, if you had big negative delta and a big decrease in open interest or a big flush, that means longs got flushed out of their position, and that's likely going to be some kind of meaningful bottom. So what you see here is oftentimes if you usually don't want new positions opening at a low if you're trying to buy. You'd want to see shorts squeezed out of, or sorry, shorts getting absorbed into a low, or late longs up here being squeezed out of their positions, and then the move happens. It's usually what you want to see at a level for you to bid it, and never mind the fact that it didn't sweep the lows. So it's very possible that the longs that enter throughout here will get squeezed out of their positions, and then that could be your shift above. That's ideally what you'd want to see. But again, we'll just have to wait and see. I just wanted to touch on that. That's a more meaningful bottom anyways. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. But yeah, I think that's pretty much everything I want to go over. I made this plenty long. So yeah, do a write-up in the Discord and see what FOMC